The gunshot pierced the evening air as Faith Taylor hunched over her kitchen table, the telegram clutched in her trembling hands. A single tear splashed onto the yellow paper, smudging the words she'd read 100 times. Regret to inform you. Husband killed. Indian attack. Condolences. The baby was due in 3 weeks, and now James was gone. Another contraction gripped her, and she realized with horror that the wetness on her chair wasn't just tears. Montana Territory, 1875. Faith had already been in labor for 18 hours when the doctor finally shook his head. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Taylor. The baby didn't survive." The words echoed in Faith's mind for days, weeks, months as she moved like a ghost through the small homestead she and James had built together. The cradle James had lovingly crafted stood empty in the corner of their bedroom, a physical reminder of all she had lost. 6 months after the funeral, both for her husband and the child who never drew breath, Faith stood at the window of her cabin, staring out at the endless Montana prairie. Winter had finally released its grip on the land, and the first tentative shoots of green were pushing through the soil. She should be planting. She should be living. But how? The homestead required more work than one woman could manage alone, even if that woman hadn't been hollow with grief. A cloud of dust on the horizon caught her attention. Riders coming. Faith reached for the rifle James had taught her to use. Visitors were rare this far out, and not always welcome. Ethan Mackenzie saw the woman in the doorway before she saw him. Rifle steady in her hands, her body framed by the rough-hewn cabin door. Even from a distance, he could see the wariness in her stance. He raised his hand slowly, showing he meant no harm. "Mrs. Taylor?" he called, keeping his horse at a respectful distance. "Name's Ethan Mackenzie. I rode with your husband in the militia last year. Came to pay my respects." Faith lowered the rifle slightly but kept it ready. "You're a bit late for the funeral, Mr. Mackenzie." Ethan removed his hat, revealing sun-bleached hair and eyes the color of the summer sky. "Been tracking a band of Blackfoot. Just got word about James last month when I hit Fort Benton." He shifted uncomfortably in his saddle. "I also came because I have something that belongs to you." Faith's eyes narrowed. "And what would that be?" Ethan turned slightly, and Faith noticed for the first time the small bundle strapped to his back. He dismounted carefully, one hand supporting the bundle. As he approached, the bundle moved, and Faith heard a soft whimper. "A baby?" she whispered, the rifle dropping to her side. "Found her 3 days ago. Lone survivor of a wagon train attack." Ethan's voice was gruff, uncomfortable. "Mother died in my arms. Asked me to find the child a good home." He looked at Faith directly. "I remembered James saying his wife was expecting. Thought maybe." Faith's hands trembled as she set the rifle aside. "She's just a baby. About 4 months, by my guess. The mother called her Lily." Ethan carefully unwrapped the bundle, revealing a small face framed by wispy dark hair. The baby blinked up at Faith with solemn eyes. Faith's hands moved of their own accord, reaching for the child. As Ethan placed the baby in her arms, he said softly, "I know it won't replace what you've lost, Mrs. Taylor, but every child deserves a mother, and every mother deserves a child." The warmth of the small body against her chest unleashed something in Faith, a flood of emotion she'd been damming for months. She sank to her knees on the porch, cradling the baby, tears streaming down her face. "I can't do this alone," she whispered. "The homestead, a child, it's too much." Ethan knelt beside her, his voice low and earnest. "You won't be alone. I promised that child's mother I'd make sure she was safe. And I owe it to James to look after his wife." He placed a calloused hand on her shoulder. "I'll stay as long as you need me to. Help you get the crop in, fix what needs fixing. Then, if you want me gone, I'll go." Faith looked up at him, this stranger who had brought life back to her doorstep. "And if I don't want you to go?" A faint smile touched Ethan's lips. "Then I reckon I'd be mighty pleased to stay, Mrs. Taylor." "Faith," she corrected him. "My name is Faith." The baby made a small mewling sound, and Faith's attention immediately shifted. "She's hungry. I don't have milk. Got some goat's milk in my saddlebag," Ethan said. "And there's a new widow over at Pearson's Creek with a 3-month-old. Might be willing to wet nurse until we can sort something more permanent." Faith nodded, the practical problem giving her something to focus on besides the overwhelming emotions. "There's a clean rag in the kitchen we can soak for her to suck on until then." As Ethan retrieved his saddlebags, Faith carried Lily into the cabin. For the first time in months, she didn't avoid looking at the empty cradle in the corner. The first weeks were a blur of sleepless nights and endless adjustments. Ethan slept in the barn, rising before dawn to tend the animals before working the fields. Faith found herself watching him from the kitchen window as he plowed and planted, his broad shoulders straining against his shirt. He was nothing like James, her husband, had been slender and scholarly despite his frontier skills. Ethan was all muscle and practical knowledge, with a quiet confidence that both intimidated and reassured her. Mrs. Simmons from Pearson's Creek agreed to wet nurse Lily 3 times a week. On the other days, they made do with goat's milk and thin porridge. The baby thrived despite the makeshift arrangements, her cheeks growing round, her grip strong when she clutched Faith's finger. One evening in late June, Faith found Ethan carving a small wooden horse on the porch steps. The day had been blisteringly hot, and now a pleasant coolness was settling over the land. Lily was finally asleep after a fussy afternoon. "That's beautiful," Faith said, nodding toward the carving. Ethan's hands stilled. "My pa taught me," said, "every child needs something to dream with." He looked up at her, his expression unreadable in the gathering dusk. "How is she?" "Sleeping, finally." Faith settled on the step beside him, closer than propriety might allow, but the wilderness had its own rules. "Thank you for everything." Ethan shrugged, uncomfortable with gratitude. "Just keeping my promise." "To Lily's mother?" "To her. To James. To you." Faith looked at him sharply. "You never made me any promises, Mr. Mackenzie." "Ethan," he corrected, setting aside his carving. "And maybe not in words." He turned to face her fully. "Mrs. Taylor, Faith, I should be moving on soon. The crop's in, the roof's patched. You're managing with Lily now." A cold knot formed in Faith's stomach. "You're leaving, unless you give me reason to stay." His voice was low, almost a whisper. Faith stared at him, understanding dawning slowly. What kind of reason would that be? Ethan reached out, his fingers brushing a strand of hair from her face. The touch was feather-light but sent a jolt through Faith's body. The kind that might make folks talk, but might also give that little girl in there a father. Faith's breath caught. "Ethan, I know it's too soon," he said quickly. "I know you're still grieving James. I'm not asking for what you had with him, just a chance to build something new. For Lily's sake. And maybe someday for ours." Faith stood abruptly, her mind racing. "I need time." Ethan nodded, his expression carefully neutral as he picked up his carving again. "Time's something I can give you." The next morning, Faith woke to the sound of hammering. She fed Lily and carried her outside to find Ethan dismantling the old chicken coop. "What are you doing?" she called. He straightened, wiping sweat from his brow. "Rebuilding it. This one's about to collapse, and the foxes will get in." "I thought you were leaving." Ethan met her eyes steadily. "Said I'd give you time. Didn't say I'd stop working while you take it." A smile tugged at Faith's lips, the first real smile in longer than she could remember. "Well, don't expect me to pay you extra for work I didn't ask for." Something like hope flickered in Ethan's eyes. Wouldn't dream of it, madam. July brought a heat wave that seemed to shimmer the very air. The crops needed constant attention to keep from withering, and Faith found herself working alongside Ethan in the fields, while Lily napped in the shade of a nearby tree. They developed a rhythm together, passing the water jug back and forth, his hand lingering against hers for a moment longer each time. At night, they would sit on the porch, Lily sleeping on Faith's chest, and talk. Ethan told her about growing up in Missouri, about fighting in the war when he was barely 18, about drifting west afterward, unable to settle. Faith shared stories of her childhood in Pennsylvania, of meeting James at a church social, of their dreams for a family and land of their own. "Do you miss it?" Ethan asked one night. "Pennsylvania, I mean." Faith considered the question. "I miss knowing what to expect. Out here, everything's a surprise: the weather, the harvests, the people." She glanced at him. "Some surprises are better than others." Ethan's smile was slow and warm in the lamplight. "And what category do I fall into, Mrs. Taylor?" "I'm still deciding," she replied, but her eyes gave her away. In early August, 3 riders appeared on the horizon. Faith was hanging laundry while Lily crawled on a blanket nearby. Ethan had gone to town for supplies. Fear clutched at Faith's throat as she scooped up Lily and hurried toward the house and her rifle. Before she could reach the door, the riders were in the yard. "Look what we found, boys," the lead rider called. A man with a pockmarked face and yellowed teeth. "A pretty little homesteader all alone." "Not alone," Faith said. Lily clutched to her chest. "My husband will be back any minute." The man laughed. "Ain't seen no husband round these parts. Just that drifter who's been playing house with you." He dismounted, his spurs jangling. "We been watching." "No, he's gone to town." Faith backed toward the door. "What do you want?" "Just being neighborly." The man's smile made her skin crawl. "Thought we might discuss buying your place. Me and my brothers need more grazing land. It's not for sale." The man took another step forward. "Everything's for sale at the right price, madam. Or under the right pressure." Lily began to cry, sensing Faith's fear. The man's expression hardened. "Shut that brat up. You need to leave. Now." Faith's voice was steadier than she felt. The man reached for his gun. "I don't think you understand how this works, lady." A rifle shot cracked the air. The man's hat flew off his head. All 3 riders froze. "Next one goes between your eyes, Willis." Ethan's voice came from behind the barn. He stepped into view, rifle raised. "Tell your brothers to back up nice and slow." The man Willis raised his hands slowly. "Mackenzie, didn't know this was your woman. Now you do." Ethan's voice was ice. "And this is your only warning. Come near my family again, I'll kill all 3 of you." Willis's eyes narrowed. "Your family? Ain't seen no preacher out this way." "Don't need a preacher to make a promise," Ethan replied. "And I've promised to protect them. Now get off our land." The tension crackled for several long seconds before Willis nodded to his brothers. They backed their horses away slowly, never taking their eyes off Ethan's rifle. "This ain't over, Mackenzie," Willis called as they retreated. "For your sake it better be," Ethan replied. When the riders were dots on the horizon, Ethan lowered his rifle and crossed quickly to Faith and Lily. "Are you hurt?" Faith shook her head, her heart still pounding. "How did you get back so fast?" "Saw their tracks crossing ours on the way back. Recognized Willis's shoe pattern. His horse has a split in the right front." Ethan's hands were gentle as they checked Lily for any signs of distress. The baby had stopped crying and was now reaching for Ethan's beard. "I rode cross-country to get ahead of them." Faith suddenly felt her knees give way. Ethan caught her with one arm, still balancing Lily with the other. "Easy now. Our family," Faith whispered. "You called us your family." Ethan's expression was solemn. Meant it too. If you'll have me. Faith looked up at him. This man who had brought her a child and now stood ready to defend them both with his life. I don't need any more time, Ethan. The answer is yes. His eyes widened. Yes to a reason for you to stay, to building something new, to giving Lily a father. Faith touched his face, her fingers tracing the line of his jaw. To all of it. Ethan's smile was like sunrise breaking over the plains. Careful of the baby between them, he leaned down and pressed his lips to Faith's a gentle first kiss that promised many more to come. That night, Ethan moved his few belongings from the barn to the cabin. They made a pallet for him near the fireplace, an arrangement that would satisfy propriety until they could be properly married. As Faith laid Lily in her cradle, no longer empty, no longer a reminder of loss, she felt Ethan's presence behind her. I'll ride for the preacher tomorrow, he said softly. Reverend Johnson comes through Harper's Junction every third Sunday. Faith turned to face him. That's nearly 2 weeks away. I can wait if you can. His eyes held hers, serious despite his small smile. Want to do this right, Faith? For all of us. She nodded, understanding. 2 weeks, then. They were married on a Sunday afternoon in late August, with Lily dressed in a gown Faith had sewn from one of her old petticoats. The ceremony was small, just the Reverend, the Simmons family who had helped with Lily, and a few neighbors from surrounding homesteads. No one mentioned the speed of the arrangement or questioned Lily's presence. The frontier had its own rules about such things, and a child with 2 loving parents was more important than adhering to Eastern sensibilities. That night, after Lily was asleep in her cradle, Faith stood nervously by the bed she had once shared with James. Ethan watched her from the doorway, understanding in his eyes. We can wait longer, he said softly, until you're ready. Faith shook her head, crossing to him and taking his hands in hers. I'm ready for our life to begin, Ethan. All of it. His kiss was different this time, deeper, filled with promise and barely restrained desire. Faith felt herself responding, her body awakening from a long slumber of grief. Later, as they lay together in the darkness, Ethan's fingers tracing patterns on her bare shoulder, Faith whispered, "Tell me again." "Tell you what?" His voice was drowsy, content. "What you promised when you first brought Lily to me." Ethan propped himself up on one elbow, his face serious in the moonlight streaming through the window. "I promised you wouldn't be alone, that I'd help you with the homestead, with Lily." His hand moved to cup her cheek. "But what I really meant, what I was too afraid to say then, was that I was promising you a future. One we'd build together." Faith covered his hand with hers. "And have you kept that promise?" "I'm just getting started," he murmured, leaning down to kiss her again. The Willis brothers returned in October, as the first frost silvered the grass. This time there were 5 of them, and they came at night. Faith woke to the smell of smoke and Ethan already pulling on his boots. "Get Lily," he ordered, grabbing his rifle. "Go out the back. Head for the root cellar." Faith didn't waste time arguing. She snatched Lily from her cradle, wrapped her in a blanket, and slipped out the back door while Ethan confronted the men setting fire to their barn. The night exploded in gunfire. Faith ran, Lily clutched to her chest, praying as she hadn't since James died. She reached the root cellar and huddled in its earthy darkness, covering Lily's mouth gently when she began to cry. More shots, shouting, then silence. Faith's heart pounded so loudly she was sure it would give away her position. Then came Ethan's voice, calling her name. She emerged cautiously to find him standing amid the smoking ruins of their barn. Blood stained his left sleeve, but he was upright, rifle still in hand. Behind him, 2 bodies lay motionless in the dirt. "Willis?" she asked, hurrying to his side. "Ran with his last brother. Won't be back." Ethan's voice was grim as he checked Lily, then pulled Faith against his side. They killed 2 of the horses. Barn's gone. Faith surveyed the damage. We can rebuild. Ethan looked down at her, surprise evident on his face. You're not afraid? After this? Terrified, she admitted. But not of staying, of losing what we've built. She touched his injured arm gently. Let's get this cleaned up. Then we can talk about what comes next. What came next was a winter of rebuilding not just the barn, but their sense of security. Neighbors helped raise the new structure before the snow flew, and Ethan reinforced the cabin against both weather and potential intruders. Willis and his remaining brother were found frozen to death in a ravine after the first blizzard. Their horses gone, their supplies exhausted. No one mourned them. By spring, Lily was walking, toddling after Ethan as he worked and calling him, "Duh," in a voice that brought tears to his eyes the first time he heard it. Faith watched them together, this man and child who had been strangers to each other, now bound by love as surely as by blood. And there was new life growing. Faith confirmed her suspicions in April, when the prairie was bursting with wildflowers. She told Ethan as they sat on their new porch swing, Lily asleep between them. A baby! His voice was hushed, his eyes wide with wonder as his hand moved to cover her still flat stomach. Our baby! Faith nodded, tears of joy spilling over. Due in November, the doctor thinks. Ethan gathered her carefully into his arms, mindful of Lily. Faith Taylor Mackenzie, he whispered against her hair. You have made me the happiest man in the Montana Territory. That's good, she replied, because I plan to keep doing it for the next 50 years at least. Summer brought the best wheat crop they'd ever seen, enough to pay off the last of their debts and put money aside for the future. Ethan hired 2 hands to help with the harvest, allowing him to spend more time preparing for the baby. He built a second cradle, more elaborate than the first, with carved horses prancing around its edges. Faith often found him in the evenings, talking softly to her growing belly, telling the baby about the stars, the mountains, the future they would all have together. These quiet moments, Lily curled in her lap, Ethan's head resting against her knees. His voice, a gentle rumble, became the foundation of their happiness. Their son was born on the first snowfall of November 1876, arriving with a lusty cry that Ethan swore could be heard all the way to Fort Benton. They named him James, in honor of the man whose absence had brought them together, and Ethan held him with hands that trembled with emotion. 2, he said wonderingly, looking from the baby to Lily, who was peering curiously at her new brother. 2 perfect children. Faith, exhausted but radiant, reached for his hand. And plenty of room in our hearts for more, if they come. Ethan's smile was brilliant as he leaned down to kiss her. I promised you a future, Faith, but I never imagined it would be this beautiful. Outside, snow blanketed the prairie, covering the scars of past violence, insulating their home against the winter to come. Inside, the cabin was warm with lamplight and love, the cradle no longer empty but filled with new life, new promise. And Faith, watching her family, the family that had come to her through loss and chance and courage, knew that some promises were meant to be kept forever.